Recognize this woman? Natalie Portman, right? How about this one? Yeah, that's J-Lo. You probably recognize most of these famous faces, right? And they're all looking. Now we're going to show you the same photos again. But this time, I want you to keep your eyes focused on the yellow star in the middle of your screen. But stay aware of the photos with your peripheral vision. Notice anything weird in your peripheral vision? Are Hollywood's beautiful people suddenly looking a little less beautiful? Are you seeing some bizarre foreheads and oddly shaped faces? If so, that's totally normal. But here's the thing, we're not altering the photos at all. Your brain is. If you want to find out how, stick around. This is a show about your brain and how you see the world around you. We're going to mess with your mind.
Oh, that is so weird.
And test your powers of perception.
Oh my gosh.
By showing you how your brain turns images into reality.
Whoa.
And teach isn't always believing.
Awesome.
So clear your mind and your eyes and get ready to watch Brain Games.
Oh.
We live in a visual world. And our visual perception is so important that even though we have 5 different senses, almost a third of our brain is devoted just to vision. And every waking moment, our eyes and brain are working overtime to make sense of the constant stream of visual information pouring in. So even as you sit back and watch this TV show, your brain is working hard to convert the images on your screen into objects that have meaning, like this one. It might not seem so interesting now, just a bunch of candles on the floor. But if we simply change your perspective, you see a whole new reality.
This is so wild.
It looks like I'm sitting on a cube of fire, right? Ouch. So how does your brain do this?
It depends on your perspective. See, the object that you're looking at literally changes depending on where you're standing.
From this perspective, it looks like a 3D cube. But from this perspective, two-dimensional rectangle.
Your brain is literally trying to make sense, interpreting the images that are being sent to it by your eyes. Perspective equals reality. It's totally insane and hot.
And one of the best ways scientists have found to reveal the tools your brain uses to build your reality is through optical illusions. To see what I mean, another look at those celebrity faces. When you look directly at these photos, they appear completely normal. But when we asked you to focus on the star, and your brain began to interpret the faces based to look a little funky. Now look directly at the photos. Everyone looks normal again, right? So how is that possible? It turns out that even particularly good at recognizing faces, our eyes don't give us particularly good resolution with our peripheral vision. So without being able to see the specific details of each face, your brain only notes the contrast between each face, then magnifies those slight differences into freaky features, making J-Lo look more like, oh. Even though your brain and eyes just worked against each other in this last game, normally they work together, like a high-functioning computer, software and hardware operating together in concert. But there are other situations where your body's software and hardware interact in ways that give you bizarre results. Like in this next game.
All right, guys, so my friend is here. I mean, I'm 6'4".
And I promise we aren't using any graphic tricks. This is a real person sitting here. So how big do you think he is?
Hey, can you stand up for me for a sec?
So, what do you think's going on here?
Wow, you're a lot bigger than I thought.
Take a look at one more with these other park goers watching on our TV monitors and see if you can figure out what's happening.
How big do you think this little puppy is? I mean, he's so cute. Well, let's find out, shall we? Come here, boy. Come here. Yes. Look at you. You're growing. Yeah.
Pretty wild, right? Surprised you're not alone.
That was really amazing.
Awesome.
So how can a 6'4" guy and a full-grown husky look like miniature versions of themselves? Let me break it down for you. We built something called a boucher chair, and it's literally designed to play with your visual perception, as cognitive scientist Dr. Dan Simons explained.
A chair is taking advantage of something that your visual system does very naturally, which is to assign up perfectly in the world, or probably like that in the world. In reality, the parts of the chair have been separated by a large amount of distance, so the seat of the chair is much farther away than the legs. If you view it from exactly the right spot, we assume that it's...
And since you're not expecting the chair to be made of an oversized back and a normal set of legs, your brain stitches the pieces together into an alternate reality, resulting in a man who appears to be tiny. The boucher chair demonstrates how your brain uses perspective to constantly make adjustments in how you perceive your day-to-day reality. Car door when you're riding down the street. But your brain does this so efficiently that sometimes it can make assumptions about the world around you that simply aren't correct. Don't believe me? Try to answer this simple question. Which of these two women is taller? It's the woman in the black jacket, right? Seems like a good answer. Let's see what some other people thought when Dr. Simons asked them the same question.
Look through the black hole right behind you, and I want you to tell me which of the two women looks bigger. The one with the white tank top or the one with the black jacket?
The one with the black jacket.
I'd say the one with the black jacket.
The one with the black jacket, but she looks like she's about 5 feet taller, which can't be.
So far, everyone has said that the woman in the black jacket is taller. Was that your answer as well? Anything I could do to change your mind? How about this? Whoa! Does it look like the woman in the white is taller now?
Oh, wow, I really can't tell now. The one with the white tank top looks quite a bit taller.
Didn't you just say that she was smaller?
I did.
Confused? Don't worry, you should be. These women are standing in a specially designed room called the Ames room, which was created specifically to mess with your visual perception.
The thing about the Ames room is you have to view it from the right place. Right here.
The Ames room is designed to create the illusion of a square room, but it's anything but than they really are. And the floor is actually built at an angle so that whoever stands in the right corner appears gigantic. Pretty wild, huh?
Why don't you guys move right to the center together?
Oh, that is so weird. How'd you do that?
The reason the Ames room works is because your brain is constantly drawing on past experiences to make assumptions about the world you see, utilizing valuable perspective cues like the lines where the walls meet the ceiling or the floor to help you judge the position and relative size of the objects around you. And since the perspective cues in the Ames room have been altered to make it look like a normal room, your brain simply does the math and says, hey, I guess the girl in the black jacket is really that tall. And for those of you keeping score at home, these two ladies are exactly the same size, 1.5 meters tall. As you're starting to see, your brain is quick to utilize any depth and perspective cues available to give you an accurate idea of what's happening around you, sometimes creating a reality that isn't always logical. But if enough of the visual and spatial cues make sense, you can suspend logic. Even when you know your brain's being tricked. And when it comes to tricking your brain, there's no specialist, Apollo Robbins. He's going to try to fool you in this next game. But if you've been paying close attention to what we've been teaching you, you might be able to figure it out.
Illusions are all about the assumptions that your mind makes. The question is, what assumptions are you making right now? How do we do that?
Why don't you take another look?
What assumptions are you making right now?
Have you figured?
How do we do that?
If not, here's a clue. That sound of Apollo tapping on the bottle isn't real. Why? Because this bottle is actually 1 meter behind the table. But your brain used the visual cues available and assumed the champagne was right next to Apollo. probably didn't guess was that Apollo's assistant was in on this illusion as well. So as soon as Apollo held up the napkin, his assistant quickly pulled the bottle to the ground, creating the illusion that it simply disappeared.
Great, cut.
Did you catch that one? If you didn't, it's no big deal.
Come here, boy.
All of the illusions you've seen so far are designed to expose just how much lies on visual perception to build a trustworthy reality. In fact, the visual cues you constantly take in are so important that when you tweak them, even slightly, your whole world can feel a little off the mark.
Oh!
Want to see what I mean? We're meeting up with Dr. Dan Simons again, along with some sharpshooters from the New York City Basketball League. Pretty dead on from just about anywhere on the court. So what do you think will happen if we shift their perspective?
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is wear these funky goggles when you do your shooting.
We outfitted these players in some special prism goggles, and like extremely high-powered glasses, the lenses in these goggles bend and refract the light so much, everything seen through them appears shifted 30 degrees to the right. So, what do you think will happen when he takes his first shot?
All right, these glasses shifted your vision off to the side by about 30 degrees. What looked like straight ahead is actually way over there.
It's kind of a strange feeling, knowing that your eyes, are lying.
Think you'd be able to sink a free throw if your eyes were lying to you? Why don't you test your visuals in this next game? Here's where the basketball hoop would appear to be if you were wearing the goggles. Knowing they shift everything 30 degrees to the right, can you guess where the... Is it position 1, 2, 3, or 4? Got your answer? Okay, let's remove the lenses. Is in position number 2. Would you have made your shot, or would you have missed, like this guy?
When I took my first couple of shots, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be easy. Glasses really threw me off. All right, one more. Let me get one more.
What's incredible about your brain, though, is that it knows how to adapt to this kind of visual. Once it realizes that something's off, it quickly readjusts your spatial sense. So even though you're still seeing things crooked, you can adapt and make your shots. Crazy, right?
Now what I'd like you to do is take the glasses off and go ahead and take a free throw shot again.
So with the world back to normal, he'll be able to sink every shot again, right?
Oh my.
What you expected would happen?
So your body had adapted to the basket being shifted off, and now you're go the other direction. Getting closer though, you're back to the rim.
So what other visual perception tools does your brain use to make sense of the world around you? Well, one of the most fundamental mechanisms at work is your ability to perceive motion. And without it, you'd have a lot of trouble now life and making sense of even the simplest things you see. Don't believe me? Take a look at this spinning ballerina. We've got a question for you, but take a second to really think about it before you answer. Which direction is she spinning? Is it clockwise? Or is it counterclockwise? With a friend, feel free to ask them the same question. Got your answer? Well, if you said clockwise, congratulations, you're right. And if you said counterclockwise, I'm sorry, but you're also right. So, how can both answers be correct? As you watch, the cells in the back of your eyes are working to detect motion, either from right to left or left to right. Since here your brain has no additional depth cues, like shadow, perspective lines, or a face, it uses the limited information available to decide on a direction. This is what we call a bistable image. But what exactly is that?
A bistable image is an image that can be interpreted in one of two possible ways. And what's interesting about the spinning dancer is you can see it rotating clockwise, or you can see it rotating counterclockwise. It's entirely ambiguous.
So if your brain interprets the leg pointing out as the dancer's right leg, she'll spin counterclockwise. But if your brain sees the leg pointing out as the left leg, she'll spin clockwise. In fact, our brains are so hardwired to seek out visual cues that when you look at a side-by-side comparison, both dancers spin the same way, even if we add the face and shadow cues to just one of the dancers. Both spinning the same way? How about now? Did they both suddenly change direction? And what's really cool is that even when we take away the visual cues, our brains will continue to see both dancers spinning in whatever direction the last visual cue indicated, even though we're not altering the silhouette on the left at all. Counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise. Phew, my brain's exhausted. We've been working your brain pretty hard, so let's give it a little break. I want you to sit back and relax as you look at this next. Don't look away until I tell you to. Got it? Don't worry, we're not hypnotizing you. But if you keep staring at the spinning wheel, you may notice a pretty cool thing that your eyes and brains do. But you have to keep looking at the spiral. Keep looking. Keep looking. Look at your hand. Wow! Is it spiraling? Or is your entire hand expanding? If so, don't worry. You're not the only one seeing things.
Ooh. Wow.
What did you experience?
It got wider and longer.
Are you seeing anything interesting?
That's for
This sensation is called a motion after effect. And it's what happens when your visual cortex gets overstimulated by one type of continuous motion, as cognitive scientist Dr. Dan Simons explains.
A motion after effect is what happens when your brain adapts to something that's moving. When you look at the rotating spiral, the cells that respond to that get fatigued. Then when you look away, they're still fatigued, they're still tired. So the end result is you see exactly the opposite motion when you look at something that's not moving at all.
Every time your brain processes an object in motion, like that ballerina, it makes instant the size, shape, speed, and direction of that object. And it's particularly good at isolating the type of object that it knows to be important: faces.
You guys recognize this famous brainiac, right? It's Albert Einstein.
Now take a look at this mask of Einstein. It may not make you a genius, but can you figure out if this is the front of the mask or the back of the mask? Before we reveal the answer, let's see what some other people thought when we asked them the same question about the famous professor.
We're approaching this Einstein mask, and as we get closer, I want you guys
To identify which is the front of the mask and which is the back of the mask.
Whoa! The back looks like the front.
Did you also think the back of the mask was the front? If so, that's a completely normal response.
My eyes and my brain were both playing a trick on me at the same time.
Just about everyone we showed this mask to couldn't tell the back.
The hollow face illusion reveals something that our visual system does quite well, which is to try and make sense of the world in the most typical way it can. We're used to seeing normal faces, not faces that are hollowed out. And your visual system assumes that when it gets something ambiguous that could be a face, that it must be a face.
Your brain was just tricked because humans are hardwired to see faces, especially when it's faces you recognize easily, like the one you just saw. But what do you think would happen if we made this big brainiac a little smaller? Wow, sorta looks like another famous face now, doesn't it? I promise, we haven't changed image. We've simply changed your perspective. So why does Albert Einstein suddenly look like Marilyn Monroe? Well, it doesn't work with every picture of Einstein, just with this specially created illusion, where the two icons have been superimposed on top of each other to make a brand new hybrid image. And because your eyes are great at recognizing details up close, the hairs of a mustache, when the image is closer to you, it looks like Albert Einstein. But as the distance between your eyes and the photo increases, your ability to pick out all of the details literally fades away, until just the broader, more general features are visible, like the shape of someone's mouth, nose, and hair, magically transforming this image into Marilyn Monroe. Amazing how a little perspective can go a long way. You've seen just how quickly your brain identifies the presence of faces, but sometimes you don't need an entire face. Often just a few simple lines are enough to create a visual map of the world around you, like in this next game. Take a look at this. Our team appears to be preparing to paint the room, right? Well, not exactly. They're actually creating what's known as anamorphic art. So, are you ready to see the final product? It's pretty cool. Cube floating in the middle of a doorway, right? Count them up. Now, if you counted 12 lines, well, that's exactly the right number of lines it takes to draw a cube. 4, 8, and 12. But this is no ordinary cube. It actually took... So why did your brain convert these 20 angled lines into the 12 perfect lines of a cube? Well, just like with the Boucher chair or the Ames room, here your brain used its past experience to decide that, well, okay, these lines seem to... Pretty cool. As you've seen throughout the show,
You know, our brains are astonishingly little machines, and one of the coolest ways to see how our brains adapt to the world around us is by looking at optical illusions like this one.
or by watching this fine my friend Apollo Robbins. See if you can apply all of the things you've learned about your visual perception to figure out what's going on here.
Congratulations, you're masters of perspective. Game. One of these is for you, and one of these is for me. It's pretty simple. Which one of these has more wine? This one or this one?
Okay, let's stop right there. The glass on the right does look a little more full, but as you've learned throughout the show, isn't always believing. So which glass do you think has more wine in it? Let's see if you're right.
This one is for you, and this one is for me.
I guess sometimes it's all about keeping things in perspective.
Cheers.